Thank you very much for joining this week's talk on the unique combination of Thursday falling on Lag BaOmer, the other way around, Lag BaOmer falling on Thursday, the 33rd day of the count of the Omer, and we lead from that into the Shabbos that we are going to read the sedra of Behar. We are still reading different sedras to the sedras that they read in the land of Israel. So in the diaspora, we just read Behar, and in Israel, they're reading Bechukosai. And this is quite a unique combination. And we pointed out that the fact that we have a leap year this year means that events are taking place in slightly different combinations than when we have one less month in the year. And the reason that we give for this leap year phenomenon is that we need to align the Shalosh Regalim. We need to make sure that the 3 foot festivals coincide with the seasons of Pesach being in spring and Shavuos being in summer and Sukkot being in autumn. And in order to do that, we have to add an extra month, 7 out of every 19 years. But it really occurs to me this year, as we've been picking up so many messages that come from the unusual combination of sedras and events, that we have this opportunity to make connections, and this is really another of the benefits of having a leap year, to enable us to see things in a certain different light that we wouldn't see when the rhythm is the slightly more predictable or usual rhythm of a not leap year. So with that in mind, I want to focus on a particular event that is associated with Lag BaOmer and see how that actually shines a certain light on the sedra of Behar, and we can find a common theme that runs through both. I would also like to dedicate the learning that we are doing, please God, on the day of Lag BaOmer, to everyone, and especially the victims of the tragic catastrophe that happened last year in Meron, which is the burial place of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and anybody who was injured in any way in that event, and really daven that, please God, they should have refuah shalema, a speedy and complete recovery, and please God, this Lag BaOmer in Meron and everywhere else should be a true celebration for everyone. So the event that I want to refer to is actually a famous story in the Gemara that talks about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who is the very famous Talmudic sage, and he passed away on Lag BaOmer, on the 33rd day of the Omer, which uncoincidentally is the 18th day of the month of Iyar, and 18 in the calendar, in the numerical system, gematria, is Yud Ches, which we often say, Chai, we invert the Yud and the Ches to Ches and Yud, and it is a symbol of life. And the anniversary of Rabbi Shimon's passing is really a celebration of his life. He is the sage accredited with developing Kabbalah, very esoteric, spiritual wisdom and learning that is contained within the Zohar, which he authored. And this is, he is very famous for these achievements. And because he transmitted his wisdom, the content of his learning before his passing, the fact that he has physically left this world is actually considered in the light of his achievements and in the legacy that he has left. And this is something that we take inspiration and example from. And really, while we inhabit this world, we live our best lives. Equally, we are mindful and we try to also prepare and leave and endure in this way. And this is very much the message of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, passing on Chai, the life, Chai, Yud, the 18th of Iyar on Lag BaOmer. And the famous story in the Gemara that I want to look at is a Gemara in the tractate Shabbos, and it is on page 33b, and it tells the story of the fact that because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was teaching Torah during the times of the Roman persecution, around the time of the destruction of the Second Temple, and that was punishable by death. So he did not listen to the Roman decree and stop teaching Torah. He continued using the concept that just like we can't live without oxygen, we can't live without Torah. So whatever the consequence from the Roman persecutors, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai continued teaching the Torah with his son. And so it came to a point that he had to go into hiding because there was a price on his head. And he went into a cave, and I'm just going to pick up the story. I'm going to read out the Art Scroll translation. Right. Okay, the Gemara continues after they've run away to this cave. That's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son Rabbi Elazar. They dwelled secluded in the cave for 12 years. Then one day Eliyahu the prophet came and stood at the mouth of the cave, and he proclaimed, "Who will inform the son of Yochai that Caesar has died, and that the decree has been annulled?" That is the decree that called for his death. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai and his son heard this, and they emerged from the cave. As they ventured back to civilization, they saw some people who were ploughing a field and sowing crops there. Angered by this, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai declared, "These people are forsaking the pursuit of the life of the world to come and occupying themselves instead with the concerns of transitory life." And thereafter, everywhere Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son would cast their gaze, the object of their vision would immediately be incinerated. Finally, a heavenly voice rang out and proclaimed to them, "Have you emerged from seclusion in order to destroy my world? Return to your cave." So the two went and returned to the cave, and dwelled there another 12 months, a full year. At that point they said to themselves, "The sentence of the evildoers in Gehenna endures for no more than 12 months. Perhaps our sentence has expired by now as well." A heavenly voice then rang out and proclaimed, "Emerge from your cave." As night began to fall, late Friday afternoon, Rabbi Shimon and his son saw a certain old man who was clutching 2 bundles of myrtles, was running home with them as twilight descended. They said to him, "These myrtle bundles, why do you need them?" He answered them, "They are in honor of Shabbos." Rabbi Shimon and his son questioned, "But could you not have sufficed with just 1 bundle?" He answered them, "One is for Zachar and the other one is for Shamar." Hearing this, Rabbi Shimon said to his son, "Look how cherished the mitzvahs are to the Jewish people. Each nuance of the law they celebrate separately," and they were appeased. So this story is an account of 2 great sages who, in response to the decree against Torah learning, forbidding the learning and teaching of Torah, they hide, they continue learning Torah, they live this rarefied spiritual existence. There's a miracle, and outside the cave where they are hiding, there's a stream and a carob tree, and that's how they sustain themselves, they nourish themselves during this period of seclusion. And when they come out and they see people using their energy and their resources in ploughing and sowing and reaping, and they're aghast that people could use their energy for physical purposes. They're not going to devote themselves to learning Torah, to spiritual spiritual pursuits, to developing a closer connection with Hashem, and so they are unable to tolerate this. And the Gemara uses the expression that they actually sizzle. With their gaze, they burn up whoever they look at, and clearly this is not sustainable. The heavenly voice calls out and says, you haven't been released, as it were, to destroy my world. And so they go back into the cave for another year. And then after this year, it happens that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai turns to his son and says that it is enough for the world with just you and me. And when they go out a second time, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is able to heal, is able to look on the people who are engaging in worldly pursuits, and he is able to, even though Rabbi Elazar still has this fiery inclination, unable to comprehend that people would want to spend their lives doing anything but learning Torah, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is able to heal that. Wherever Rabbi Elazar's gaze burns, Rabbi Shimon is able to heal. And so we have this balance of high level spiritual infusions going on, and spiritual connections to the exclusion of anything physical. And this, Hashem says, this is not what he wants for the world. Hashem has created a world that is filled with human beings made of flesh and blood, a world of plants and animals in all its intricate complexity, and everything and everyone has a role. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son have this unique role to be the spiritual leaders of the generation, but that is not going to be at the expense of ruling out, considering every other way of serving Hashem as less than. What Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son are doing was the right thing for them to do, but everybody else has got their specific role, whether it's the farmers, whether it's the businessmen, and our challenge is to infuse that with spirituality. The unadulterated spirituality is firstly not for everyone, and secondly, never a justification for looking down on other people. And I think that these are the messages that come through, and especially when we look at the conclusion of this story, that when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son meet an elderly gentleman with 2 bundles of flowers. These they were the equivalent of the bouquet of flowers that we will try to grace our tables with on Shabbos, and they are representative of Zachar and Shamar, the 2 words that are used to impart the obligation, the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos. So with Zachar, we have the mitzvahs aseh, we have the commandments to perform certain acts, for example, making Kiddush. And so this is a positive, this is a mitzvah to do a particular action. And then with Shamar, we have the mitzvahs lo saseh, the prohibitions against certain activities that we cannot do on Shabbos. And so both of these are celebrated and represented in these 2 bunches of flowers that the elderly gentleman is bringing home before Shabbos. And perhaps this is one of the ways, a very graphic way, that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son see that really it's about fusing, it's about combining the physical, the represented by the flowers, and the spiritual, because they are in honor of the Shabbos. And this is how the world is going to achieve a balance. And this is the challenge. And this is something that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai this story is attributed to him. And so really appropriate that we think about it on Lag BaOmer. And so this year, as the sedra of Behar follows close on the heels of of Lag BaOmer, I think that a similar message emerges. We have the unique phenomenon, and I'm going to read from chapter 25, verse 1 in Vayikra, in Leviticus. Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe behar Sinai lemo. And Hashem spoke to Moshe at Mount Sinai, saying, Daber el bnei Yisrael va'amarta alehem, speak to the children of Israel, and you will say to them, Ki savo el ha'oretz asher ani nosein lachem v'shovsa ha'oretz Shabbos laHashem. When you come to the land that I am giving to you, and the land shall rest a Shabbos rest for Hashem. So the unique formula at the beginning that Hashem spoke at Har Sinai, this is the only mitzvah of Shemitah in this portion that we just read now, that we hear that this was said at Har Sinai. And Rashi picks up, and we'll look at Rashi. Ma inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai. What is the matter of Shemitah doing next to Mount Sinai, as opposed to any other law? V'halo kol ha-mitzvos ne'emru Sinai. Were not all the commandments said at Sinai? Ella, but it is written to teach Ma Shemitah ne'emru kloloseha ufrotoseha v'dikdukeha mi-Sinai. Just like all of the general rules, the details, and the fine points were said at Sinai, af kula, so too with all of the commandments. So Rashi picks up on the fact that what is similar with this instance of Shemitah being said at Har Sinai is just like we have all the minutiae of Shemitah that are described in the verses that we read in our sedra of Behar. So too, all the other commandments were given at Mount Sinai, and they are given with all of the relevant details as well. But I think that if we just look at what Har Sinai, and the actual mountain of Sinai, and also Midbar Sinai, the desert of Sinai, what that represents, and also what Shemitah represents. And a similar pattern is emerging to the pattern of the story that we read about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son. And that pattern is that Har Sinai is a place that is associated, immortalized in lovely songs that are sung in kindergartens, and it is the values are already relatable to all ages and all stages, that the Torah is given on Har Sinai because it is the lowest mountain. It's not Mount Everest. It is humble. It is the emblem of humility, and this is a prerequisite for receiving the Torah, which is given at Har Sinai. But not only that, if we look at the Midbar, the desert of Sinai in this case, and a desert is a place that is perhaps close, we could say that because it's devoid of distraction, it's devoid of significant habitation, it's devoid of material comforts in a very extreme way. And so it can symbolize this intense spirituality that we saw Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son in the cave. This is a kind of spirit, physically sparse and spiritually full way of living. It's represented by Har Sinai and by the desert. So why do we have to have this command of Shemitah, which is associated with the land of Israel, going into the land of Israel and going into a way of life that's going to be rooted, grounded in the physical? In the Midbar, in the wilderness, we learn that the children Bnei Israel received the man, the miraculous hamotzi lechem min hashamayim, the bread that was brought down from the heavens. They had to do nothing. They were the recipients. They were passive. This was an open miracle, a gift from Hashem, arriving almost, depending on how righteous they were, to their doorstep. And this was their clothes grew with them. Their whole way of life was based on miracle and a completely spiritual, ethereal existence. With Shemitah, we have got the transition to a completely um, a life that is still going to be based on miracles, but these are going to be miracles concealed behind the veils of nature, behind the seasons, behind the weather patterns, behind the need to plough the ground and sow the seeds and reap the harvest. And all of these are no less miracles as we see patterns, as we are able to please God watch a crop grow and enjoy the benefits of this harvest. But it is a different kind of miracle. It's a miracle that will involve human input, human effort, and with that come dangers that people will think this is my hard work, or people will get too caught up in all of the physical and neglect the spiritual as a result. And I think that the reason possibly that Shemitah is singled out in this way is that Hashem is saying that in this place, in Har Sinai, which is the epitome of the high spiritual connection with Hashem, we are learning about the practical. We are learning about the land. We are learning about farming. And you might say, gosh, well, that's not very spiritual at all. But I think that just like Shemitah and all of the laws of that surround Shemitah are brought to Har Sinai, are mentioned specifically at Har Sinai, we need to bring Har Sinai to the land. So when the Jewish people go into the land of Israel and they start a life that is going to be requiring a lot of physical effort and input on their part, they need to bring the spirituality of Har Sinai, the mountain of Sinai, and the wilderness of Sinai, and infuse their lives in this way, make the physical spiritual and the spiritual physical. Just like the elderly gentleman in the Gemara, who with his 2 bunches of myrtles was able to placate Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son, and make them realize that not only is it possible to combine the physical and the spiritual in this way, but it's what Hashem actually wants of us. And so I think with this in mind, we can see the connection that the configuration this year sheds on Lag BaOmer and how it can link up in these ideas with the sedra of behar that we read on Shabbos in the diaspora. Thank you very much for listening and wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom.